signs do not have to be there. You can still have the damage going on throughout the body, all the microvascular trees, without these neurological signs that we see. And that is because these neurological signs are simply a window into a larger building of your whole body of this process happening. We actually just have the means to see it here now with our own eyes, looking at it the right way, to know that this process is occurring. And here's more of Rhonda again, very distressed, very distraught, basically realized something has happened to her. No one can tell her that there is anything. They say you have psychological problems, go see a psychiatrist. And we wash our hands of these individuals. This is from the infants to the adults across all spectrum of toxins, of infectious diseases, and unfortunately vaccines, and more specifically with the adjuvants we're complexing the vaccines with, especially the aluminum, which has a 64-time increased risk of clotting in your body. And that's why we use deodorant. We have deodorant complex with aluminum because aluminum causes things to coagulate, to clump, and it actually plugs up the perspiration pores in your armpits, and this is why we use that. And if you want to see this for yourself at home, if you just take a little glass of water and you put flour in that glass of water in a suspension, and you can pour in a bit of your favorite deodorant that has aluminum in it, and you'll watch the chunks of the flour slowly drop out of that suspension at the bottom of the glass. That's what's happening in your blood supply at the small microvessel levels. And that's profound for blood flow for areas of tissue that require constant rates of oxygen in order to maintain their life and their functionality. And these varied symptoms is what's actually been happening for everybody. Now this is a very important piece as well. This is another Gulf War vet, Private Peter Bowles. Now you see he's lost his hair. This is after anthrax series of vaccines as well. But you see him in this series of slides here. He's grabbing his hand and holding it, squeezing it. So you go through the top slides here. He squeezes his hand and lets go. And you can see the hand all turn white. But when he lets go, it stays white in the area he squeezed. And the reason why it stays white that way, because the color variations in your skin, getting red or pink or in color or going white, is a function of the blood flow through it. So if you take your hand and you hold on your blood vessels really, really tight here and close your hand and open it, close it, you'll see that your hand becomes very, very white. That's because there's no blood supply going in there. But when you let go, in comes the blood supply, gets its color back. Mr. Bowles here, after the anthrax vaccine, squeezing his hand like this, he's showing you when he lets go that it stays white here across this area. All the microvessel, small blood vessel areas going to these areas have been burnt out. They've been, by the sludging process from the vaccinations, the lack of oxygen to these small blood vessels, these areas have been killed. So it's kind of like having the main roads coming through the area, which are still intact, but all the side roads to these areas of tissue have been burnt off and closed down and damaged. What we see happening here in the symptoms of his hand is the same process that's happening silently throughout the brain, the gastrointestinal tract, the kidneys, the liver, and the rest of the body as a function of an adverse response to these vaccines, which can be clinically silent or profound, up to including learning disabilities, cognitive problems, and death from sudden death. But this damage here is the same damage going on in the brain. These things you see in his hand in the bottom screen there, that's strokes to this vascular supply to his hand, leaving permanent lack of oxygen delivery to these areas. So this is the problem for all of these disorders as a function of these vaccines. This one more slide again with both him on both sides of me now. If you look here and you look here, you will see not only is he showing you the hand of how white it is after he squeezed it, but look at his eye as well. When you catch him changing gaze and trying to refocus in some areas, look at that right eye. He's not focused directly looking at you. You won't see this when he's actually changing vision because it happens so fast, but when he's moving here because of the stroke damages to his brainstem that affects the controls of the eyes, this one eye here is actually way up in the top underneath the eyelid. They're completely out of sync. And this movement of the eye up and down in the vertical plane is no different from the sixth nerve damage. So he's damaged the fourth cranial nerve in subtle ways. In the same ischemic process, you see no blood supply to his hand, same no blood supply to these areas of his brain that control these functions. And as neurologists and physicians, we don't see the standard neurological signs where the eye is always turned in and up, you can catch these subtle deficits because it's not main arterioles that are being blocked off, it's the smaller end pipes, the capillary beds, the outer sort of like side streets from the side roads that are actually being lost, and the tissue subserved from that loses part of its function. And the clinical signs it creates are subtle, but they're definitively reflecting brain damage. And in these cases, as far as we've known at this point, it's been permanent. But we do have ways to help recover it, and we'll get to that in the next video series we talk about. Eye up and in. And here, this final slide here as well, I have a picture of a brain down in the corner showing a darkened area, which is an infarcted area, an area with no blood supply coming to it. What we see in his hands, and the arrows are pointing over to the brain. No oxygen here, no oxygen in there. But his hands are still completely intact. So you don't lose the tissue here, so we don't see damage in the CT scans, computerized tomography. We don't see damage in magnetic resonance imaging, and we don't see damage in angiograms or anything else. All the tools we have to non-invasively look at the functioning and structure of the brain are all completely 100% blind to this process. We do not see it. And clinically, you do not know what's happening. Without knowing the person is being harmed, without any symptoms that we know to say they're being harmed, we miss the whole process going on in the acute period of time and in the here and now, and unfortunately, serious consequences emerge from that. But this is things we are causing. And unfortunately as well, private bowels crying now from the eye. He's quite distressed. His life is now not the way it was supposed to be. The vaccines we mandated he had to have in order to do his tour of duty has caused these problems for him. The same individuals are hurt by, everyone's hurt by the vaccines for children, by the same mechanism, but the diagnosis and disease disorders, to some degree, a bit of randomness to it, depending on the age you're harmed at, the time in development you actually have this damage happening to you, and more specifically, the randomness of what blood vessels actually get preferentially hurt the most at certain times in development. And in this particular case, he was also diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome. And that just goes to tell you as well, another neuropsychiatric disorder created by an environmental influence that creates no real observable clinical signs that we can see, but now you can see some of them. And it's vascularly based, it's ischemia, no oxygen based, and it creates very specific neurological deficits. And Tourette's syndrome is the loss of the ability to control motor movements, and you can have tics and you can have vocalizations. There we go again to another unknown cause of a very profound neurological disorder, Tourette's syndrome, same physiological basis as all of these other illnesses we're talking about, on a continuum as a common mechanism of injury in response to a variety of triggers. The bottom common line is this is sludging of the blood, and we can now control that.